This podcast contains spoilers, so listen at your own risk or call back after you've watched the movie.
You know who you call. Leave a message. Maybe they'll call you back. Then again, maybe they won't.
We're having ourselves quite a little game of phone tag here.
Ring, ring, ring. I usually get this guy's answering machine.
I'll call you right back.
If you're there, please pick up the phone. I really want to talk to you.
I check my fucking messages every day when I come home from work. My answering machine, zero. I got a blinking light.
All I have to do is pick up this phone right here, inform the cinema, and your plan's kaput.
No, I ain't got no phone. I had to pull, because people calling all the time, and who needs the aggravation, right? Interruptions.
Hey man, Easter weekend right now. Just out doing some grocery shopping for all the shops are closed tomorrow for Easter, and pushing my son in the pram. He was crying a minute ago, but he seems all right now, but he might pipe up in a minute. I might have to cut this short, but just wanted to drop you a quick voice note on a movie I watched last night, Strange World, which you had mentioned you were interested in seeing. I thought you had seen, actually. A vague memory of you telling me years ago. What, years ago? It's only come out like 2 years ago, but a vague memory of you telling me that you watched it and that it was like better than one might have thought. But you have told me recently that you were potentially interested in watching it because you knew I was watching it for Animated April, where I watch an animated film every day throughout April. So yeah, I'm not sure if it's one that you love so much that you actually want to revisit, or if it's one that I'm mistaken and you actually haven't seen. Anyway, I missed it when it came out. Thanks very much. Thank you. I missed it a couple of years ago when it came out. I think I caught a look at the trailers and just their general marketing of it, and it seemed a bit cookie cutter almost. I don't know. It didn't leave much of an impression. But at the same time, when a major animated film comes out, like a big Disney film as this is, part of me is like, I'll watch that if I'm interested in it. Kind of like if I like the look of it, then I'm looking forward to seeing it. But part of me is like, oh, stick that in the old animation backlog, because when it comes down to choosing films for Animated April each year, I don't really have that many massive tentpole blockbuster animated films that I haven't seen. So, when one comes out, it's like, that'll go in an upcoming Animated April. So yeah, I'm not really sure. It's been a couple of years, obviously, since it came out. 3 years, I think. So I'm not sure if I was just disinterested or if I was deliberately saving it for this. But when it popped up last night, because I don't know the movies, I make these lists like a year in advance, so I've long forgotten what films are coming in Animated April. It's always just a case of sit down in the evening, throw on that nice film, and it's like, oh, this is what I'm getting, okay. And last night it was Strange World. So Strange World, I think it's called. Strange World? Same Strange Worlds? I'm not sure, actually. Interesting flick. Some things, I'm glad I saw it. It's not classic for the ages. It's not Aladdin. It's not Lion King. It's one if I didn't have kids, I probably wouldn't be revisiting, because I do have kids. I'd probably see it about 5 more times before I die. But it's got some things that really worked for me and some things that didn't work at all. Stars Jake Gyllenhaal as son of Dennis Quaid for the second time. We've seen him as the son of Dennis Quaid back in the old Roland Emmerich movie, Day After Tomorrow. So reunited. And on the one hand, it's kind of your classic coming of age story of like, the dad, he's hyper masculine and an old fashioned dinosaur with old values and old kind of norms about like what is a man's place in society, and I need you to live up to being like basically me. And then on the other hand, it deviates massively from those kind of those I don't know what the word is, but those norms essentially. And to an extent that works, to an extent it doesn't work. But a few interesting things about it though, just like apparent from the get-go. The art style is very normal Disney, just like, you know, the classic, just like Frozen or whatever. But the character design, like the way people actually look, like their faces and stuff like that, is quite different. It actually really reminded me of Franco-Belgian comics, like Asterix the Gaul, for example. Big bulbous noses, two little cartoony eyes in close together, and stuff like that. So it's got in its the way the character's designed something a little bit different. I believe this is from the director of Big Hero 6, which was another one that was like, in many ways, very straightforward, big Disney CGI movie, but in some other sort of design ways had like a bit of a different thing going on. And then the inspiration seems to be like old school. Sorry, it's a busy road here now, so I'm not sure if you're getting much noise pollution from these cars, but yeah, it's very much a callback to the old 50s sci-fi stuff, the time machine, journey to the center of the earth. There was that one where they shrink down and they go inside someone's body, and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I watched it with my wife, and I was talking about how like that era of fantastic voyages, and if you went to Mars, sure, there'd be Martians there. The people were so naive back then. It's so unscientifically minded compared to nowadays, that there was a lot, like a pretty high degree of plausibility in, well, look, if you go away from everything that we know the country we live in, we're maybe learned enough to know about all of the countries on planet Earth. As soon as you go away from that, like you go inside planet Earth, or you go up to a different planet, or you go forward in time or something, as soon as you step away from the stuff that we know, then all bets are off. And then, shortly after that, you had the moon landing, and you had, just, I guess, eventually like the internet and all these kind of things that have now made it the idea of, if you went to Mars, there would be big Mars monsters there, seem kind of ridiculous to people. And at this point, you get something like Interstellar, which is supposed to be like the most spectacular, awe-inspiring sci-fi voyage movie of its day. But everywhere they go is just like a rocky surface, It's like going to Iceland or something. So this is a callback to that. And I hadn't really seen that for a while. Now, granted, it's a kids movie and it's set in a fantasy world, and it's not like it starts out in London and then they go on an adventure from there. But it's still interesting to see a genre that was so prevalent many years ago now, 70 years ago or whatever, and kind of rear its head again, which is, I'm a big fan of that. Like I grew up on Irish TV, middle of the day, watching like old adventures, fantasy sci-fi adventures. And yeah, I just have a lot of nostalgia for that kind of thing. And that mostly worked for me. The kind of carte blanche to show a magical world. Like if you look at the recent the ones that come to mind anyway, the recent Disney movies, the likes of Frozen and Moana and stuff, they're not the worlds you're seeing, like literally the worlds that you're seeing in those movies are not that awe-inspiring. And it doesn't need to be a magical world. I feel like Aladdin has an awe-inspiring world. I stand corrected. Moana does have some pretty cool stuff in it in terms of like the world, like those little coconut monster people and stuff like that. But this one takes the biscuit in that regard. Whatever you could say about the film, and there are complaints that I'll get onto shortly, but whatever negatives you could say about the film, I think you have to acknowledge that the world that we see in this film is really, really good. Really cool and interesting. Just give you one little example. They're going through this like grassland area, where the grandfather character is using a flamethrower to kind of clear their path. And then when they've kind of walked on a bit, behind them, these cute little glowing ball of light creatures will like all scuttle in behind them. And then they'll like, their heads will grow up like these big sort of shoots and make the new grass, like tall grass behind them. And like, that is just one example of like a pretty much constant barrage of nice little imaginative, cartoony, colorful elements of world building that this film has. Kind of reminded me of Adventure Time a little bit, where it's like, let's show a really well realized world, but we're not beholden to any kind of scientific or logical rigor. We can kind of just do whatever we want. And that is the best thing about this film. We were talking about it today because myself and the wife were talking about it over breakfast, and I was saying how, you know, it's not the best film ever by any means, but it has got some good fun to it. Like the action, I think, is really good. Frozen, I know my daughter's completely obsessed with it, and it has been the most successful Disney movie ever, in terms of the animated films at least. But I just think that there is like, it's very serious, and there's not that much fun about it. And fun is so much of it's such a key component to my memory of Disney films growing up. Now, Frozen is its own thing as well. And I think you have to commend Frozen I think you have to commend anything that targets a particular demographic. And then when that demographic catches like a glimpse of it, they go, this is the best thing ever. As much as people outside of the target demographic might not like it, there is something commendable about delivering the best possible entertainment for the people that it's interested in entertaining. Like, for example, puzzles. Any Minecraft movies come out, and everyone's like, all the critics and adults are like, and this is the worst movie ever. But, you know, for the people that it was made for, they're absolutely adoring it. And what else? That's where we got little kids. There's things like Coconut, which is like practically being in Guantanamo Bay for an hour, all big around that. But any kid cuts the lips of it, and they're like, this is the best thing ever. So, yeah, I think Disney have still know what they're doing. They do have misfires, but I loved Encanto recently, almost 2 years. I thought it was brilliant. That again is like fun role. If I was very led to Strange World, in my opinion. Strange World, the best thing it has about it is visually very striking. Like, not just they went in a different direction, but they went in a different direction and they realized it really well. And then the action scenes are fun. Not the best I've ever seen. Not going to go overboard, but those are two elements that kept me invested in this film all the way through. Now, I suppose I'll just, no time like present to start chipping away at that reverence for the film. So the character stuff in this film, to me, falls flat. I think it's mismanaged and uninspired. I think I look back at Aladdin was my favorite as a kid, so I'm going to hold that in a very high regard. But it could be The Jungle Book. It could even be, you know, The Princess and the Frog, Mulan. Like, there's numerous ones where I look back and I'm like, I love those characters. The characters that I'm supposed to hate, I hate. The characters I'm supposed to find funny, I find funny. The characters that I'm supposed to be invested in as like the heroes, and I'm gonna, I kind of want them to resolve all of their like relationship conflicts or all of their like adventure goals or whatever. It's got me in every regard, and I think that's, if you're at the end of the day, more or less every Disney animated film has got, this is the most sort of stupid statement ever, but it has got characters, an ensemble of characters kind of going through a story, right? That is, it's you almost wouldn't even think to say that, but it is actually like a really important aspect of these films, really, really important. the character work, how the characters, how well drawn they are, what they want, how the appeal of them really, like how much do you find them funny and scary and sad and all that kind of stuff. And this film, I was watching, I was like, I can't actually, I like toys of these characters. I can't imagine anyone going, that character now, that is iconically what I adore, you know, whether it's the princess or it's the buccaneer. The grandfather character is like the more, he falls into like that classic adventure archetype. But it's not like he's funny enough for, just no character in this big help for me really has the X factor. I think the closest one is Splat, the little blue blob thing. And when I saw Splat, I was like, this reminds me of Betamax or Baymax or whatever that character was called from Big Hero 6, which I believe is a comic adaptation, so they didn't originate that character. But then when I found out it was the same director, I was like, okay, this guy has delivered a really good voiceless character in the past, and it's doing it again in a way, but Splat doesn't get quite enough to do. He doesn't get that much of an emotional arc. He's trying to be bad at the beginning, which we only know that for like 2 seconds before he's good again. And he does some cool bits and pieces. Like I said, the action is good in this movie, but it's not like we get enough character stuff from Splat to like really love him as a character. I think falls short of like, they need to greenlit a Splat TV show because, you know, they've done such a good job in this movie. So yeah, the character stuff I think is quite weak. And then the story stuff I think is just a mess. Like, I don't mind that it's like they've got some adventure mission that they need to do. They need to go off and do the adventure mission and get the, you know, like in Moana, it's like, we need to get this like rune thing or whatever it is. We need to bring it to this place. I don't need any more than that. That's fine. And this movie has that, but it's all of the stuff where it's like, this is a movie about familial dynamics. This is a movie about gender norms or like the expectations of masculinity in society and stuff like that. That is such a big part of this film, which is great stuff to hang a film on. Look at something like Inside Out. Like, you can make phenomenal children's entertainment by hanging it on the actual concerns and pressures and societal sort of existential crises or whatever that young people coming of age undergo, or families. I think that's all great. Like, I think when they first conceptualized this movie, we were like, it's going to be an adventure movie, but it's starring a family, just like the Incredibles, right? It's going to be a family working through all of the complicated interpersonal politics and expectations and differing personalities and just people with different souls trying to express themselves, but we're going to do it through like a fun 50s sci-fi adventure. I'm all for that, and I think that that's a really good idea. And I think for me, they kind of like, they didn't nail that. They didn't get where they needed to get with that. It's not all completely terrible, but it's not enough there. So just as an example, I think this could like birth a bigger conversation that would be interesting to kind of examine why this film does or doesn't work for an individual person. So this film's obviously very consciously trying to answer criticisms or a deficit in representation that Disney has come under fire for, that Hollywood has come under fire for, and that like certain minority groups feel they just don't feel seen or represented on screen in big mainstream or like, you know, for kids and cinema or whatever, like Disney, exactly what Disney is, like your most mainstream, big, high profile movies. So we're going to feature various things. So like we're going to feature mixed race relationships. We're going to feature homosexuality. We're going to feature a like toxic masculinity / what even does it mean to be masculine and stuff like that. So it's got all of those, well, not all those, it's got those few handful of things that it's working into the movie. And by turns, this film seems to want to interrogate those things, and then it, in the complete opposite end of the spectrum, wants to sort of have them so normalized that they don't even warrant a second's reference, right? So it seems to me that the film they've made a choice to set this film in a utopia where there is no racism, there is no homophobia, and people are free to exist as their natural self without fear of persecution or judgment or whatever. And I think that is a perfectly fine choice. That is the most common choice that children's films make. If you're watching like an Aardman movie or something like that, there's like a black character or there's a gay character, something like that. Sorry, my phone keeps cancelling out my voice messages here. Phone really on its last legs, but I've been saying that for about a year. So yeah, what was I saying? So most children's films, when they have a character from a minority, like a gay character or Islamic character or black character or something, they make it, as this film does half the time, that is a non-entity, that's completely irrelevant, that they're just normal. It's just literally like completely inconsequential that they're female or gay or whatever. And that's great. Like, I think that's a brilliant approach because it allows kids like kids going to see a fun adventure movie don't have to see a discussion of like misogyny or something just so that they can see like themselves as a woman going on an adventure or something. It's also fine for them to be able to watch something like Moana, which is like, it's not about that. It's just a fun adventure and they get to see themselves up on screen doing that. I think that's brilliant and that's really valuable. And I also think it's really great when a film goes, no, we're going to actually make a movie that's like, this is about the patriarchy and this is like about how there's unfair pressures put on girls, like in the form of a fun children's movie. Like, both of those approaches are really, really valuable. Obviously the movie has to be a good movie, but yeah, that's great, picking one of those lanes. Now this film does something a little bit different, where it goes, this is a utopia where there's no racism, there's no homophobia or anything like that, but like 40% of the movie we're going to make it about how generationally there are very different expectations on what it means to be masculine. We're going to make one of the major characters in the movie like an old dinosaur, more like conservative, narrow-minded, like, this how we're supposed to be. You want to be a farmer? What are you talking about? Newfangled shit, like that classic. We've seen him in 1,000 movies, that character. We've seen him in real life 1,000 times, and kind of the generational clash of like, well, actually, if you're going to be challenging the status quo a bit, and you're going to be like, I'm not falling into like how you used to have to be. I'm a different person. Things are changing, and I want to be accepted as my actual self, not because I meet certain archaic parameters. That is what this film is about to an extent. Like I said, it's like half the time it is, half the time it isn't. And I just don't think on Trigger Mary Together Gruwa, like it doesn't, to me, it doesn't really benefit this grandfather character, that he's the ultimate archetype of like men should be men, and this is what I do. And this, he's in many ways he's just like a classic kind of, look, this is how people used to think. And his mission, his character arc is going to be meeting people halfway and going, you know what, it's okay for you to be different or whatever. It doesn't benefit the film that he's that, but he also, there's no friction between him and any of the more open-minded modern, not modern, but like things that have become more accepted as time goes on. And they go out of their way to make sure that he doesn't have any problems whatsoever with any of the things that in our real world, a character like him may be inclined to bristle up against. Now, again, a film can 100% make it so that the main character is gay, or one of the main characters, and their grandfather doesn't care and is perfectly accepting of that. That is the norm in children's films, but it's just confusing when the film also seems to be trying to take a swing at like how hard it is to go up against life when you are different and you're not Again, my phone's put me off there. I'll wrap this up because it's getting a bit ridiculous. But yeah, the film, it seems to me like to try and have his cake and eat it, in a sense of like, we want to, and there's both things that it wants to do are very noble. One is show people that it's completely normal and literally a zero entity fact when you are gay or mixed race or whatever. And then the other thing that the film wants to do is go, it's so hard being different, and it's so hard being not meeting traditional stereotypes of like heteronormative young man, blah, 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 blah. And because I felt like those two things were clashing and the characters weren't that good, all of the stuff that's like, let's have a family like work through their issues and try and understand and accept each other better, all of that stuff I felt left a lot to be desired. Maybe this is tackling or choosing not to tackle by turns more challenging subject matter than something like The Incredibles, which is a similar kind of format of like, she's got this anxiety, he's got this expectation of himself and blah, 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 blah. And like by the end of the movie, by the end of this really fun adventure, here we go, try to make another attempt. It's like I'm also pushing a really heavy pram, so like every time I have to like turn the pram, I'm like changing which phone my hand is in, and sometimes I'm like hitting the power button, and my phone doesn't like that either. So yeah, I think this is, they bit off more than they were interested in chewing here on the character stuff. And I think when you don't have good character stuff in your movie, because it's not anchored onto something that you can go, okay, this is the through line, these are the challenges that these people face, this is how they're going to overcome it, this resonates with me, this is, this speaks to the human experience, all this kind of thing. When you don't have that stuff in place, even though it's not what you talk about when you talk about The Lion King or something like that, you don't talk about those kind of, that sort of sociological underpinning that it might have. You just think of it of like Hakuna Matata and this big fun thing. But if you don't get that stuff right, it's amazing how much more shallow the whole experience seems. For me, obviously, I'm a big animation nerd, so I think often when I watch an anime film, I feel like I get more from the film than someone who's not really interested in animation. No, I'm not saying this is interesting animation, but there is interesting elements visually here, and there's a lot of good filmmaking in terms of like just the shots and stuff and the editing when you go into those action sequences, and just kind of generally, like, it's a lot of nice kind of establishing shots and things are framed well. And I thought like it had a lot of very engaging and easy to just go along with, very professionally and competently made stuff from a filmmaking perspective that got me through. So I would actually say I like this film, even though I've just gone on like a massive big multi-voice noted, unfortunately, probably incoherent ramble on challenges that I had with it. And it's just, I feel like that's kind of a shame, that stuff, because it means that this film is just going the way of the dodo. I think no one will have heard of it in 5 years' time. It was a flop, which is fine because, you know, I think some great Disney movies have been flops. Like, if I remember correctly, Princess and the Frog wasn't a massive hit. And that's probably the last princess one that I really liked, unless you count Encanto as a princess movie, in which case I liked that one a lot as well. But like Tangled, the Frozen movies, I haven't seen Wish actually, but that one was a massive flop. So I don't know, it feels like this could have been workshopped a bit better on a script level, and then everything that comes after screenwriting is pretty decent in my book. So yeah, I'll leave it there for now. Be interesting to see what you think. And oh yeah, on the stuff of like journeying through a body, like as we were watching it, first early on I was like, oh, it's interesting how they've chosen specifically to take inspiration from oceanic stuff, where you've got like the manta ray type creature, kind of like manta ray meets pterodactyl. That's one of the early monster types, creature types that we see. And then a lot of the scenery in the film, at that point of the film at least, really reminded me of like coral reefs and algae and like underwater stuff. I was like, oh, that's cool. I like that that's kind of a nice surreal piece of inspiration, because all of that, all those aesthetics we're used to seeing underwater. So they're taking all of that, but then overwater. And then later on, I was like, this really looks like capillaries and like blood cells and lungs and stuff like that. And it turned out that actually was what the film was doing. Eventually it's revealed. And that's cool. Like, that's brilliant. I want my Disney movies to be imaginative and weird like that. That reminded me a bit of Osmosis Jones. And I just think that world, I'm a lot more excited for that, Frozen. And don't trace to major animated films, like blockbuster films. I just watched Migration the other day again. Like, it's fine, it's cool, but like, give me something I've never seen before. This film gives me a lot I've never seen before, and it's really imaginative. I think it was like great funding, the concept art and stuff, and like dreaming up all of these like motifs. So it's stuff like that that makes me not remotely regret having watched it, and actually, like, I would say enjoyed it, but then it was always just like pretty pictures to me, rather than something where I'm like, oh, I love this character, or I'm having great fun from the character stuff. Although I did find some stuff funny. Like, I think there's lots of like little sight gags and stuff. Like, I think there's one bit where he's like, you look like a lumpy rock, and there's just like a lumpy rock beside him that coincidentally looks just like him. There's nice little cute gags like that here and there. So I got enough from it. I watched it with my wife. She didn't get enough from it. She thought it was pretty weak. I think it's not one for the ages, but I'm curious to see how it worked for you.
Yeah, if you want to donate a new phone to Michael, please send all your vouchers and pennies to wherever. Actually, I don't even know your address, let alone will I give it out on a random voice note. So yeah, just contact us if you're sick of hearing Michael's phone cut out every 2 minutes. So yeah, I didn't have as strong as reaction either way to this movie as you, quite honestly. Now, I didn't actually go into the movie match fit either, I guess is the best way of putting it. I was pretty tired. I watched a lot of wrestling the last few days, and getting woken up at 7 a.m. by my cats wanting food. I've changed their feeding time, so now if I even stir in the morning time, they start jumping on my head and meowing at the door, so I have to even get up at 7 o'clock the last few days as well, which I suppose is nothing to you with 2 kids, but it is something to me. So when I was watching this movie, I was in a strange state of zong where I was awake and I was watching it, but that little bit of, I don't know what the word is, but the thing that makes my brain think and analyze wasn't really there, or maybe there wasn't much to analyze about this movie for me. But I certainly really enjoyed hearing your voice note, and some of the points you make are fascinating and definitely would like to delve into them. Yeah, this movie is reminiscent of Journey to the Center of the Earth and those 1950s sci-fis that you're talking about, Lost Planet and whatnot. And I think the movie you're talking about where they go inside the body, is that Inner Space? I think that's the 80s if it is, but yeah, certainly very reminiscent of those type of movies. And I really liked what you said about the level of imagination that was around at those times in terms of the punts that were taken, in terms of imagining what Mars would be like, imagining what other worlds would be like, imagining what the center of the world would be like. It's almost like, in a way, science is the enemy of imagination and creativity, because once you have a scientific definition almost of what Mars is like, this rocky orange planet, this planet of dust, then you're not really going to buy John Carter from Mars, whatever it's called, R.I.P. Taylor Kitsch's career. So I think people certainly accept quite less those type of things, and there's an almost pseudo-science, and I mean that in the best possible way, that comes with those classic adventure movies in their imagination, where, well, why couldn't it be like that? And nowadays, if you have to do something like that, you have to set it in the realm of fantasy, and that comes with its own type of genre tropes. But if you set a movie in the world of pseudoscience, maybe is pseudoscience the genre, I wonder? Or is it just before science could prove it? I don't know. It allows these type of movies to fit into a different type of genre. So that's interesting to note as well. And I do think animation gets away a lot more with, for instance, as you say, the people of Mars explanation for who's on Mars. For instance, I'm watching Invincible at the moment, which is a superhero thing, and it clearly says, yeah, there's people in Mars. They're just under the surface, and you buy that easily. It doesn't sound as ridiculous as a live action might, or at least the live action would have to do a lot of work to get you comfortable with that idea. And then Scavenger's Reign, I think that's what it's called, the Netflix animated series, hypothesizes a completely different ecosystem and rules to anything we could fathom in a distant planet. And I think we can accept stuff like that a little bit easier as well, the further it is away from our planet. And I won't get into a interstellar debate with you, because this will completely derail what this conversation would be. But I think the point of Interstellar is it's not meant to be spectacular as a voyage. It's meant to be the most vapid voyage away from feeling of what's central, which is your family and the love of your people. But anyway, we'll save that for if we ever, God forbid, rewatch Interstellar and have a massive disagreement on it. So yeah, it is interesting the points you made about just the naivety of some of these conceptions, but at the end of the day, it's fantastical, and that's what you can admire about these type of movies and these type of depictions. And one of the things that Stranger Planet, is that what it's called? Stranger Planet? Strange World. I think that's one of the things it does have going for it. Other than that, I wasn't completely wowed. There's a number of things you brought up that I'll get into. So, for instance, the opening of the movie almost solves the central plot of these type of movies, or the central conflict, should I say, of these type of movies. And then the movie almost spends the rest of the time going back on it and complicating it even more. We get this scene early on where there's a young Jake Gyllenhaal's character and young Dennis Quaid. No, an old Dennis Quaid, should I say. Dennis Quaid is, I want to explore and go beyond this mountain. And then at this point, it almost starts in the final act of a different movie. And Jake Gyllenhaal has got support. He finally tells his dad that I'm not like you, Dad. And then they listen and he comes and he becomes the hero. That's the end of the movie. That is the end of, what's it called? How to Train Your Dragon. What the benchmark for this type of father-son conflict and all the issues you're talking about, masculinity. In fact, the main character in this movie is so reminiscent in both design and in attitude to a lesser extent of Jared Butler's character in that. And I think that's a fantastic example of how you do that conflict well, and you keep the central character hard-headed and temperamental, and you show that you don't have to be like your dad. Well, in this, that's shown in the first 5 minutes. Obviously, his dad disappears in the movie. Takes place 25 years later, where Jake Gyllenhaal is now a success, a fantastic farmer that saved the town. So we've already missed one movie, and a movie that probably would have worked better than this. They could have just done that movie and accomplished the same thing. But this movie tries to take a multi-generational approach to this, where now Jake Gyllenhaal has a son, and his son thinks more like his granddad. And now there's the central conflict, yet again, that he's just thinking different to his father. So I think that's pretty cool, actually. And it also, I think, contradicts some of the problems where it's not actually saying that the granddad is wrong or it's no way of life. They're saying it's a different way of life. And like the board game in this movie where the three of them play, it's about working with your environment, adapting with your environment, and working together. So I'm not sure this movie is fully interested in a generational conflict as much as it is people are different in that way, which the only time it really is interested in it is between the three characters, the three generations. And I don't think it particularly does it well either, to be fair. But I will say this as well. Sometimes you can have your adult brain on and then you need to put your kid brain on. I'm not saying you particularly, but I just mean in general. So what you're talking about with the gay character and the mixed race couple in this, I would much rather they introduce these type of characters like this without getting into it, that it is a type of utopia in a way, because at the end of the day, movies are an escape. You don't want to watch every movie. You don't want to watch a sci-fi movie like Terminator where they bring up, hey, bit of racism here, or hey, don't you know that women have it hard? You don't have a big Sarah Connor fucking subplot, because you really need to be interested in that as your central idea, or at least in a character idea, in order to even bring it up, because otherwise it can be disastrous. And those things are often in conflict with each other. And I think Disney at this point, the criticism is almost the other way, where they try to appease too much with quote unquote woke stuff. But I like what they did in this, and there's certain situations where it's at a conflict with each other. Like in the Star Wars, the latest trilogy, there's a scene where Rey is trying to be rescued by the John Boyega character, and while he's going to try and rescue her, she already sorts out the situation. And I can understand both sides of it. You don't want to show a damsel in distress, but at the same time, what is the point of even showing a scene like that? You've lost the enjoyment of somebody kicking ass and bringing someone to rescue and showing that they're really capable, and you've lost the tension of the scene. You've lost so much, whereas you might as well not include that. And I think there's a scene in the Suicide Squad where the whole point of this whole act is that they have to rescue Harley Quinn from this facility, but she breaks herself out while this is going on and rescues herself. And it's like, yeah, I get what you're doing, and I get why you find some of those quotes, one of those tropes problematic, but well, don't really devote so much time to the plotting of the movie just to make that point. So in something like this, I would much rather they just don't deal with it, because if you're a kid and you've got your kid brain, just seeing things accepted makes you feel like it's more normal and makes you feel like it's more a natural part of society. And it's subliminally, which some people accuse Disney of in a negative sense, where they're promoting certain ideologies or whatever. I don't care about that, but I like when they just showcase this as a matter of fact, because you have a friend in school who's in a mixed race relationship. You probably have seen a gay person at a certain age, you know, a young enough age. It doesn't have to be going into the sexuality of it, but just showing it on a very basic level for a kid brain is great. And I think there'll be enough movies where you can deal into the things that are problematic and horrible in society later on, or at least in a more careful level of this. I think there's a character in, what is it? Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. I think she's meant to be done up and a pretty reporter or something, but she wants to wear glasses and to take read books. It's been a long time now, but when I first saw that, I thought it was revolutionary. I was thinking, that's great. That's great that they're bringing and showing that there's an alternative way. And I think that's what kids need to see. So while you're watching something and you're thinking, oh, this is a take on masculinity and they should go stronger or they should go lesser, or I'm not saying you're saying that, but all a kid is saying when they're watching something like that is, yeah, sometimes my parents want me to do something that I don't want to do. And I feel bad about that because I want to please my parents. Oh, but look, this person showed that he's capable in doing stuff and surprising people. And then kids like their grandparents. So it's not necessarily when you put your kid brain on, outlandish that there's no conflict between the granddad and the grandson. It's more like, yeah, when I'm with my grandparents, I don't have that conflict that I have with my parents. And a lot of people have sweet grandparents that might be racist and homophobic, and you'd never know because they're sweet to the grandkids. But yeah, I think on this basic level, the things that they engage with for kid brains is fine because they're thinking at that level. Now, for me watching it, I agree with what you're saying almost wholeheartedly. lacks that type of conflict, and it lacks that opportunity for the granddad to have a problem and scenes of growth and unacceptance turn to acceptance and realization. That's always good as well. There's a movie, Green Book, that I really love. I think you really like as well, where a lot of it is about the buddy cop mixed and racism type of conceit between the character played by, I think it's, what's his name, Mahershala Ali, and the guy from The Lord of the Rings, what's his name, Viggo Mortensen. And the movie spends a lot of time devoted to that, and then as the movie continues, there's a scene where you find out that the Mahershala Ali character is also gay, and then Viggo Mortensen just accepts that, and that's fine because you've already devoted time to something. You don't need to devote time to the same thing just to make a point, you know? So I think the movie does fine with that. And in terms of the adventure itself, I really liked the visuals and the conception and the creation and design. It reminded me actually of Avatar a little bit as well, where you have this type of ecosystem, and again, the ecosystem of the characters and how they connect and interact with each other, but also the ecosystem of the environment, like you mentioned, with the capillaries and the heart and the eyes and the lungs, whatever it is. The way they conceptualize that and work it into the adventure is very good. And there is some decent action sequences, but like you said, it's pretty visuals, and it is lacking something significant, for me at least, in the entertainment value of it all and how it comes together. And I think going back to that board game that they play with each other, where they're saying, what's the bad guy? Well, there is no bad guy. I guess you're the bad guy for yourself. You're your own worst enemy. I feel like the movie suffers from not having a more of an antagonist. And I'm not talking in a mustache twirling type of way, but even if you're talking about something like Jurassic Park, where it's the park gone crazy, which I guess, or something like The Lost World, the sequel to Jurassic Park, although the humans are pretty bad in that, with Pete Postlethwaite and whatnot, but let's just stick to Jurassic Park. You still had something like a T-Rex and velociraptors, and I know we got those octopusy type creatures in this, but I would like to have seen a more central threat chasing him through these scenarios as well, maybe, because yeah, there's something about this movie stopped me from engaging in it fully. Now, what I will say is I really enjoyed the voice work of Jake Gyllenhaal and Dennis Quaid. They're not doing anything spectacular or anything, but just their voices themselves lend themselves to animation and animation in general very well. It's that Jake Gyllenhaal pillhead manic type of energy works very well as the voice of the character in this, and Dennis Quaid's type of snarly, listen to me kid type of energy works quite well, just as the voices they've chosen. So there's that as well. So yeah, not crazy about this. And yeah, I actually hadn't seen it before. I think I said that I wanted to see it because I heard it was better than it was, and that probably is the case based on the ratings and based on how, like you said, this movie will be ultimately forgotten about, but I don't regret watching it. Some pretty things.
it's funny. I'm actually a huge Gyllenhaal fan, but I didn't think he was great in the movie. Dennis Quaid, I thought did surprisingly well. I was actually surprised to see the level of a character he was doing, because I guess I've just seen a lot of times this thing of like, well, I'll just be me, I'll just do my voice. And he was doing a character to the extent that it could have actually been a professional voice actor who was playing that role. Gyllenhaal, I don't know, he didn't really bring anything special to the movie for me, and I say that as a big fan of his work. But anyway, Avatar is a great point of comparison. I remember when that movie came out, James Cameron said in an interview that they'd go away, they do all their concept art, they try and invent the craziest aliens and monsters and the weirdest creatures they could, and then they'd go look at deep sea life. And obviously Cameron's completely obsessed with deep sea exploration, but they'd go look at deep sea life and they'd find things that were just so much weirder and wilder than anything they could dream up. And I love that both Avatar and Strange Worlds, or World, which is it? I can't get it straight in my head, but both of these movies really draw from nature, but like in interesting ways and surprising ways. Like, oh, we're going to draw from dinosaur life here. Oh, we're going to draw from the inside of human biology here. Oh, we're going to draw from aquatic vegetation for this bit. And I love that. I think, again, film is visually beautiful. It's a pity that it was such a flop, because we won't be seeing a sequel that could have been even more wild and on a bigger scale. I'm sure it wouldn't have been a good movie, because sequels pretty much never are, but it could have been visually incredible. And just on this thing, I think I might have come across wrong. So I just want to make sure that I clarify what I mean when I'm talking about this stuff in the movie. I definitely agree wholeheartedly with everything you're saying about it's better to not make a big deal or make any sort of a deal about the representation stuff in a film, and just present it as normal, so that people who are like young people going and watching a fun adventure film can just see their self up on screen represented as just a completely normal person. You might be gay, you might be black, you might be whatever, but you're just normal. You've got as much entitlement to go on a magical adventure as anyone else. And that's like probably the best messaging that you could possibly give a young person going to watch one of these films. And I also think it's great to make children's anime films that are allegories for prejudices in society, stuff like that. So the idea of the grandfather not minding that his grandson is gay, I have zero issues with if it was just that in isolation. In fact, quite the opposite. I think it's brilliant. But where I massively disagree with you is you said that this film isn't interested in the generational conflict. And I would say that this film is entirely about the generational conflict. That is basically the main theme of this film, which is hit upon many times in every single scene in the movie. It's basically every single character dynamic in this film is about that. And it's specifically about tolerance within a cross-generational dynamic, and open-mindedness to how people that come after you, your progeny, are not necessarily going to hold the same values, priorities as you. And you're going to have to open your mind a bit to accept them as they are, rather than expecting them to be like you. And that ultimately, to me, starts to feel very shallow and very baseless. There doesn't feel like there's a firm foundation to that, because we other than that interplay between the characters, we seem to live in a society that just doesn't have any concept of intolerance or narrow-mindedness or anything like that. The two messages don't marry up together for me. So yeah, that's where you can obviously make a logical argument for it. You could go, well, the characters only care about these things, they don't care about those things. But I'm just saying, like, in terms of the rhythms of the film, it doesn't there's not much cohesion there. If I was watching a Pixar movie, I expect that sort of theming and character work would have been thought out way more deeply, and you'd end up with a film that felt like it was about more, because this film ultimately doesn't feel like it's about enough because it doesn't have anything specific to say about anything. And again, as I've said, it doesn't need to have anything to say. It doesn't need to be about anything. It can choose to just be a complete fun adventure movie, but then don't make 40% of your film about something, but just not really following through in any kind of interesting way. All that said, I like the movie. I think it was a fun adventure visually. I thought the action was really good. So for me, it didn't eat away at the film too much. It's just like something, I guess, that is worth discussing. You mentioned there that, is there such a thing as pseudoscience, like as a film genre? If there isn't, someone needs to make a list quick, because I think that's a great, back in the day, of course, there was a lot, but nowadays, like you said, in children's entertainment, it's accepted technically, like, you know, Harry Potter, like everything you could say is sort of suits. They're always going to have some amount of realism kind of intertwined with some amount of rules intertwined with any kind of fantasy world. But I think outside of children's entertainment, just looking at stuff for adults, I like that the old school adventure movies that were made for adults back in, I don't know, like the 50s, B movies, I'm thinking like that, where it's like a group of scientists, let's say Creature from the Black Lagoon, that series is a good example of it. Like, it's the characters are scientists and they're going on an expedition, and it's supposed to be taken as a, you know, reasonably serious adult piece of entertainment. But, you know, they discover fantastical realms and stuff like that. It feels to me like that's a genre that's kind of underserved. And I don't know, I think we've lost some of the fun campness of it, and we have to like make sure it's too dark and serious. I'm not going to invoke Interstellar again. I know we feel differently about that, and it's probably lots that I don't appreciate about that movie. But yeah, anyway. So yeah, Strange World, if it is called that. I think the director of it has many hits under his belt. Weird thing about animated films, or maybe it's just Disney, they always have this thing where it's like director, so-and-so, co-director, other person. Have you noticed that? Aardman does this as well. There goes my phone cutting off of me again. I think I'll take that as my cue to leave. But yeah. Flick that's better than people give it credit for. And I'd way prefer to see more braver, interesting, weirder stuff like this, even though it's a very flawed movie to me, than more conservative, like rehashing of the same formulas over and over again, or God forbid, sequels to existing hit movies. So yeah, I'm happy to have watched it, and I'm forgetting it by the day.
Hey man, just also to clarify on my end, I didn't mean that they're not interested in a generational conflict within the dynamics of the family itself in that movie. What I'm saying is that they're not interested in a generational conflict in a way that a movie would showcase it that's interested in a general sense, in terms of the general tropes you might have if it's an actual family drama, and how the people would act as a way of reflecting society. But yeah, it would be nice to see a sequel, which we won't get. And I also wonder how much more enjoyment I would have got from this in the cinema with the visuals. And yeah, let's get on that pseudoscience film list.
Your mailbox is full. Please delete new or stored messages which you no longer need so that new messages may be received.